Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
Hello, this is Chris Parker, and we are back with Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. And today, I'm delighted to have Rune Theill here, who's one of the founders of Rockstart. And he is indeed everywhere, meaning he's, I believe, in the south of France, taking advantage of the COVID time, turning it into a bit of a working holiday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, we just went remote first as a company. So I'm sitting here south of France. That's not much of a holiday. I'm still working, but it's a nice warm location. Yeah. So thanks for noticing. So as you mentioned, my name is Rune Theill. I'm originally from Denmark. I grew up on a small farm there in the countryside. And basically, in a family where it was very important to be sustainable, self-sufficient on this little farm. So very early on, I really got an interest in, being sustainable and it's an organic farm I grew up, so on. It was also a very entrepreneurial environment. So everything I knew from a really young age was really entrepreneurship. My dad kept sort of promoting to start your own business and sometimes gave me the tools in order to do so. I remember having my first computer when I was 11 and could play around and build stuff there. So I guess coming from that environment, I followed sort of the normal path in life towards, going to university and then expecting to come out and get a good corporate job. But I noticed at university, I wasn't much interested actually in going towards the end of that goal. Mm. I was jumping sideways along the way, and very early on decided to start my first company. So I was more focused on that than actually studying. And that's where I sort of got into the entire entrepreneurial mindset and, okay, what does it take to build a global technology company? I was in Copenhagen at the time, let's say, starting at 2004, moving there and started sort of my first tech company. And there wasn't much resources available. So the whole thing we talk about now with lean startup and the agile approach, I mean, we took a different approach, and that was based on feedback from the people we met at universities, the professors, right? They told us, build a business plan, go talk to the market, raise some money, and then build your business. So I think I wasted approximately 1.5 years in trying to achieve that dream, right? With very little success, because everyone told me like, well, come back when you have validation. And it's hard to have, we felt it was hard to have validation without being able to build this massive solution that we had in mind. So the first project really failed. And then I started thinking, okay, how do I do this better? Being a competitive individual, I did not accept that the first failure was just going to be my entrepreneurial experience. So I taught myself how to code a little bit. And I was able to build sort of my own e-commerce, turn it into a marketplace, focus on something that I knew really, really well from the farm that I grew up, which was actually the production of Christmas trees that everyone's in Denmark are having, also in the Netherlands where you're currently located. And did I freeze right now? Chris, you look frozen on my screen.
Your screen is frozen, but I hear you fine. So keep going.
Oh, excellent. We can keep going. All right. Yeah. But then long story short, I mean, that very lean approach to building a business was suddenly worked. I launched the website after, spending quite some time building it, but I got the first sale within, I think it was 2 days or so. So suddenly I was sitting there like sold for 500 euros worth in these services that I created. And I thought, okay, that was a much stronger validation to what I wanted to do than the 1.5 years of constantly talking to people and getting validation, trying to get validation from them. So getting it directly from the consumer. And then I started looking into, best practices of building technology companies. I spent some time going to San Francisco. I got very much involved with the ecosystem in Copenhagen and realized that, in Europe at the time, there was really no ecosystem and network for young entrepreneurs. So that became, I guess, purpose in life in some way. I felt that I was fortunate enough to discover certain ways of operating in order to get the success that you needed in order to move on. Yeah.
Well, I can see how hearing this story because as a mentor with one of the tracks of Rockstart, the AI track, because I think you're also in energy and agri-food and health, at least. The AI track last year, and that was my first year as a mentor. What I was really impressed with was that these oftentimes young, not always, but entrepreneurs were really being supported to validate the proposition as opposed to validate a business model. At least that's what I really picked up. That the point of the program seemed to be really refine the proposition or refine the product or service, through exposure to customers, while surrounded by just a really diverse and beautiful, a group of mentors that had all sorts of little micro, pieces of knowledge that they could contribute along the way. And I thought it was just refreshingly positive and on point compared to, okay, well, let's, maybe as a typical incubator, okay, let's take someone's idea and try to ramp it up and crank it out as fast as you can. So I'm curious, is what I observed in line with your ambition or
I would say so. I'm happy if that's what you experienced. I think, we're a larger team now of like 35 people. So I'm not always so directly involved on each program that we run, but the intention from the very beginning was to create this pressure cooker environment and challenge people on actually not taking action. The idea of sitting behind your laptop and coding for half a year, that's very comforting for a lot of people, right? You're not stepping much out of your comfort zone because you're not pushing yourself to pick up the phone and call potential customers, and you're not pushing yourself to try to pitch your concept to investors and get no's for 50 times before someone maybe say yes.
Yeah.
So it's always been, and I think that came very much from my own personal experience, getting over those insecurities early on and sort of like being pushed a little bit to just do it, because in the process of taking those actions, you learn a lot. You get the relevant feedback, and you start building those relationships that you will later benefit from. So I think I would almost say it's never too early to start engaging. I think I only see it being too late often when people are about to run out of money and to start building the sales pipeline, and it's just too late. I mean, that's our role as an accelerator. We really have to push the boundaries there, I think.
No, it's funny you say that, because I have suffered from this build it and they will come myself too many times. Also with ebullient, in fact, because when I started this, sort of as a true hobby last year, I spent days developing an online education platform, which I will never use now because simply no one cared, no one needed that. It was delightful doing it, just geeking out and doing it. But as far as value creation, knowledge creation a bit, but essentially zero. And also another, like the simplicity scan, which is the little canvas that I use, that I've developed for my own failures and suffering over time, and it has 15 areas on it. And my original idea was, have someone fill out the 15 areas, and then they could go talk to customers about it. And what I realized is actually you only need to fill out the first 5. And in fact, purpose, who is the customer, what's the product, what the experience you're going to create, and the mindset. And what I realized is just actually stop there, because if you just take that and go talk to someone about it, you're going to learn so much. And then trying to figure out an operating model and stuff, it doesn't even matter until you have those other things sorted out. So,
indeed,
it's so again, I'm delighted that Rockstart exists to help people hopefully avoid the suffering that at least I have done. I'm wondering if people can actually learn that wisdom, or does everyone need to suffer themselves a little bit?
I think we all have to. I mean, that's my perspective after seeing it now 24 times, right? Programs running over and over again. Like, no, you cannot transfer that experience, I think, easily, but you can speed it up, right? So that's why accelerators might have gotten, I think, a little bit of also negative sentiment along the years, because there's been so many varieties of quality and expected output. But I think the core idea that we went in with is for me not to spend the first 1.5 years of, my entrepreneurial career doing completely the wrong things, right? I think we should try to do that in half a year and get as much learning and iteration and experience into that. And the focus and speed in understanding this can definitely happen through an accelerator. I really believe that.
Yeah, and coming back to Rockstart as a business, I'm curious. Have you also done some of that work yourself? I mean, do you have a clear definition of your perfect customer? Your perfect persona or avatar of your perfect customer? Or can you? But maybe there might not be only one. But what's your vision on who's the perfect type of individual or small company that would be the match with Rockstart?
Yeah. No, I think I mean a little bit. We have the sort of the similar issue. Sometimes the carpenter has to change their own roof, right, and never get to it. But yeah, we I mean, I think it's a bit broader than how we used to think about it. We used to think that sort of like these young ambitious team coming straight out of university with not enough entrepreneurial or professional experience to know exactly what to do, and you could basically significantly speed up the learning curve by going through Rockstart. And I would say back in the days, that was also true. I think we were much more focused on the curriculum of being a successful entrepreneur than we are right now. That have changed over the years. And that's also with these domain focuses we have, as you mentioned, within AI, agri-food, health, energy. Basically, now it's much more about coming into a structured environment, a network of market partners, a network of relevant investors that like what is in the domain that you're operating in. I think the understanding of what it takes to build a startup, that material is available, in many different resources for it. So I think we have less focus on the basics and more focused on supporting entrepreneurs who has a clear sort of team market fit, where they have the right domain expertise, but they're really looking to break in certain organizations where we have the network and so on. And so I think we do both.
Yeah. Do you prefer to have an established team that already has a bit of some sort of productization and maybe a little bit of traction, or are you looking for things a bit earlier than that?
No, I think it has to be validated in some way. Mm-hmm. So that's from let's say the commercial validation, right? So the value proposition is already sort of checked off by someone in the market. That's what we would be looking for. Meaning there has to be a team together, right? In most instances. But that being said, I think there's two kind of startups I've seen succeeding. That's the one that have like a complementary team. So like, the 3 individuals, one, let's say, doing the commercial, one doing the technology, and one doing the design for like a technology product, right? There's also, of course, like the 2-version team, but there's a team. And then there's the unusual individual, that one crazy person who will do whatever it takes, right? So use an example that everyone talks about, everyone's lips these days, Elon Musk, right? I think he's one of those characters who will just do whatever it takes to make it happen. I don't think it's teamwork. I think is his perception on what he can do. I think it's slowly built up, and now he's unstoppable in some way, right? And that's also something that you need to look for, because we are an investor. We're looking for interesting proposition that can return capital over time. Mm-hmm. So it's not always about the team, although there's been sort of almost built like a narrative that if you're not a team, you cannot succeed. It's not true. Some of the most successful companies we have in our portfolio, it's a single person company, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And some of the companies that I've come in contact with were like, there's one, and I wish I could remember the name. Maybe you do. It's the gentleman, I think, was from Russia. Wonderful guy. and he had built something that used the CCTV cameras of parking lots to see where there were free parking spaces. And so
Spot vision, yeah.
Spot vision,
yeah.
exactly. And and the way he built it was just elegantly simple, and it clearly worked. And it was difficult to find the perfect customer for it. And I had quite a few conversations with him around, because essentially they needed somewhere that had CCTV cameras, that had full coverage of the parking space. And so, like in a parking garage, it didn't work because there's too many poles and there's other technologies and stuff like that. And so for me, it was great to talk to him and also think out of the box. Actually, got him in touch with someone I knew at the largest amusement park here in the Netherlands, because that was when I was brainstorming with him. It's okay, well, that's a large parking lot. I've suffered myself coming in, realizing that we're just getting a very linear process that the parking attendants just put you in order, knowing full well that there's empty parking spots up in the front. And so I was very selfishly hoping that that amusement park would pick it up. I'm not sure if they did. I know that at least they were in contact, but I think that's the kind of fun and valuable sort of interactions that. Going back to something you said earlier, going sort of remote first. And you're not the only person to, we had a bit of a conversation, but what I'm hearing again and again and again is what people are missing in remote first are the informal little accidental, synchronicity engagements that, maybe I wouldn't have had that kind of conversation with the guy from Spot Vision.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas? And this is just a general question, and I don't know if it's even solvable, but how can you, I don't think you can stage these, but, create a water cooler type of vibe so people can keep that buzz going?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a real challenge at the moment. The serendipity that we used to see in the initial interaction when joining the program, right, is more difficult to foresee how we orchestrate that, because just randomly putting people into the same Zoom room seems sometimes to be an awkward experience over a relationship building experience. So although we are taking a remote approach now, we will actually put more focus on events, in a sense that we will try to make events much more of an experience, a unique experience. So if you come to Rockstart, you will hopefully remember the event because it was on an unusual location. You were doing something unusual. You might put into, getting certain task or playing a certain role. Something that's every time is slightly different than what it used to be. I think we sort of recycled over the last 8 years. We existed the same events, right? So we were sort of doing then selection days, then we had like the introduction, kickoff event, then we do like prototype. I mean, it became sort of a formula, right? And now part of that formula is like, how do we build meaningful connections that matters for people? And I think in the world where, we realize we can do this, we can just talk to each other, you sitting in the Netherlands, me in south of France, then where do we really want to spend our time, right? When we want to travel, it needs to be something that is a high value add. So I think our job becomes now to build stronger and more long-lasting relationships throughout a program like the ones we run. Then the randomness of it, and how to, I'm still not sure how to manage that, because of course we are still the designer in that entire interaction. So to answer your question entirely, I don't know, but there is some ideas about how to build relationships.
Well, things that I've seen that have worked a bit, but a bit wonky. Like as you said, we at one point we had this sort of mastermind community that we're trying to replace the in-person events with digital events, and having someone speak for a little bit, and then a group discussion, and then put people randomly into Zoom rooms, and that created some, but it was like, I was on another exponential organization large-scale event. There's like 1,500 people across multiple geographies for 3 days. And on that platform, Hopin, there's actually a blind date, speed date thing that you check into the networking and it pushes you randomly to someone for 3 minutes, and at the end you can say if you like or dislike. Little corny,
Yeah.
but it was interesting. But none of these came anywhere near to, quite frankly, having that coffee or that beer or that wine and just walking up to a table of people you don't know and saying, "Hey, what's up, bitches? What's going on?"
Yeah.
They look at you and like, "Well, who are you?" And then let magic happen. So, so it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a blend over time of remote first and sort of immersive, experience designed events.
Yeah. I think it's still from the technology point of view. I mean, that there will be tools, as you mentioned yourself, right? We're early in this this new era, and I think there's a lot that there will be a lot coming up. So that's what we're expecting. We're betting a bit on the technology in the future.
Yeah, well, we're not the only people, talking about this and trying to figure that out.
No.
So
that's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah. So, coming back to, I'm curious to ask a question about the balance between, call it this unstructured magic moments and structured productivity, because you triggered me with something on that you have a bit of a formula that is known to work, and you need to build in enough space for accidents and learning and a bit of failures and stuff. I'm just curious for yourself, how do you strike that balance between structure and unstructure in order to keep things a bit on track?
It's a very that's also a very interesting one, I think, because that's very much in the core of entrepreneurship, right? Like you can really you can very easily kill your projects by putting too much governance and structure into it, right? I think we talked about that in this introduction. Like you've been successful yourself in basically taking it out of corporate and running with it. And I think how we will manage this, we're trying to do it in a way where we become structured 1 week every month. So we have these deep dive weeks where it's very clear what needs to happen, and the interaction is designed, and we are fully in control of those interactions. That's how we design it. So then we can influence the structure in certain ways. And then for the 3 weeks of the month when we run these programs, it's much more fluid. Like we allow for the serendipity. We allow for, out of the process thinking. And by having it with this structured approach only once every month, it allows us to also become lean and agile between each week, right? So the things that I'm learning from the interaction you're having with a certain founder in one deep dive week can influence how I design the next structured approach for the upcoming. So that's the way we managed to do it so far. But yeah, the introducing individuals into a community, into an ecosystem, with this serendipity randomness that comes with it. That's a good one. I would love to hear your thinking on it, with your experiences in different projects. Like how do you do this? Yeah.
Well, what a couple of thoughts. One, I've just completed a sort of an innovation certification, and in hindsight, what I realized is actually they had staged into this whole learning process failure moments, and for me that felt artificial. And I understand the sentiment. They emphasize the fact that hey, through innovation you need to fail and learn, but in order to stage it seemed a bit awkward. So my recommendation would be don't do that. When I've organized events. Back a couple of years ago, when customer experience was still an evolving thing, and now it's very much an industry term. For 5 years, we did a Sex in the City, CEX, Sex in the City event. We called it the local customer experience leadership event. And there we really applied our own customer journey mapping to these half-day long events, or sometimes day-long events. And there, so we had sort of highs and lows. We as far as energy of speakers, we also purposely built in a full, I think it was like an hour and a half of speed date, just for unstructured time. And we had, very long breaks, those types of things. So, and I think if you were to expand that out on a whole program, then I think for me, I would think about, okay, well, what would be the highs and lows? Where would they need to be that structured sort of intellectual stuff? Where would they on the other side be just fully unstructured moments together? And then probably something in between that, like okay, here's a challenge, so something maybe outside of their own domain that, go solve something else. I don't want to call it team building, but some sort of simulation, which then sparks, I think because what you're trying to do is just spark connection. But anyways, as a mentor, I'd love to help with you guys if you're ever, thinking about how to design that.
No, excellent. Because I think it comes down to actually taking the lead, right, and designing it. Also the serendipity that you want to try to have in there. And then the thing is, like, how do you simulate that in a remote environment? That's the question that we have to think further about. And I actually think there's some concepts still to be developed. Just just testing out different ways. I would love to continue that discussion. Indeed.
We got about 2 minutes or so left, maybe just a bit longer. I'm curious to go, and the next question is around personal energy, personal momentum. Keep going. And maybe if I can ask the question very broadly, of all the entrepreneurs that you have seen, including yourself, the ones that were most mentally fit and resilient, mentally and emotionally, spiritually, what do those people do? What do they do different than the people who maybe lost their energy and maybe gave up?
Yeah, there's not one there's not one specific thing that fits everyone, right? I think, and that's the beauty about entrepreneurship. There's really no rule book, and there's no exact guidelines. We've seen it all by now, right? There's the individuals that goes all in and never take a holiday and just work like 80 hours a week. And then there's the individuals who have a very structured environment and ensure that they take off time when they take off time at 6 o'clock at home. And then, so I think, the number one thing that I see with the ones that are successful is that they, regardless of which direction they're choosing in life, then discipline is always there. Like you do stick to whatever direction that you set out to do, right? So here we created our plan and then we set out to execute it, and then we have different ways of getting that. But I think the ones that I've seen that has not been disciplined, like hasn't followed through on certain agreements that we set, started out with making a monthly newsletter that they would send out, then they became less disciplined and it became down to like every quarter and, not keeping themselves to the level of standard that they set out to do. I think that's the number one reason to lose your energy, regardless of what direction that you will take. But I will say as well that I noticed that the ones that keep their energy level high does like have sort of an obsession on the side, like some kind of thing that they're really excited about outside, building this startup, because it's very easy to get fully thrown into it, and that way I think if there's nothing else than that, it's very easy to when trouble comes, which it will, to just lose your energy because you put so much emphasis into succeeding, and there's nothing else that you can you can go towards. So that would be my number one thing to and I always recommend that, like, have a hobby on the side, have a side project where you can get your head off. Great. For sure.
Rune, thank you so much. We need to wrap up.
Chris, thanks a lot for the invitation. It was a super nice conversation. Thanks for that.
And I hope some people are inspired and they reach out to you and become part of the community. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Learn more at evillian.com/podcast.